His hand was on my throat. Not to hurt, just to remind me I had begged for this. The mirror was gone. The rules were gone. Only the sound of our breathing filled the room, tangled between the sheets we swore we'd never share. "Say it again," he whispered against my lips. I did. Louder this time. And if you want to know what happened before this moment, how we went from strangers to this, I need you to hit that like button and subscribe. You won't want to miss what's coming next. I met my husband for the first time, 3 hours after I legally became his wife. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't even memorable, except for the chill that ran down my spine when he finally looked at me. Not through the lens of a camera or a legal agreement, but with those pale, glacial eyes I'd later learn to fear and crave in equal measure. I was 22. My father owed more money than I could count. And Caleb Wolfe, he didn't offer a proposal. He offered a solution. "It's business," his lawyer had said. "Your family keeps their name. Mr. Wolfe keeps his control over a particular board vote. You walk away with your father's company intact, and your dignity. Dignity, apparently, meant signing away your future to a man whose wedding you wouldn't attend and whose vows would be delivered through a courier. So no, there were no flowers, no dress, no whispered "I do," just ink on paper and silence that stretched too long after. They drove me to the Wolfe estate in a silent, all-black car. I wasn't allowed to bring anything except what fit in one small suitcase. My phone was compromised, they said, disconnected at the border of his world and mine. The house was like nothing I'd ever seen. Modern steel collided with cold, marble in a way that made everything feel clean but unlived. High ceilings swallowed my breath. A wall of glass windows faced the city skyline, but the blinds were drawn. Every surface gleamed. No warmth, no flaws. "This way, Mrs. Wolfe," the housekeeper said. She didn't smile. The master suite was the size of my father's entire store. There was a walk-in closet lined with clothes I didn't pick, a bed, like a hotel's, and a full-length mirror positioned directly opposite it, tall and framed in black steel, staring me down like a second pair of eyes. I didn't see Caleb until that night. The door opened soundlessly as I stood in front of the mirror, wrapped in a silk robe that clung to my skin like mist. I didn't turn around. I didn't speak. But I saw him, tall, still, composed, in the reflection. His shirt was unbuttoned at the collar. His sleeves rolled to the forearm, revealing veined hands and a silver watch that probably cost more than my father's business was worth. "You're smaller than I expected," he said quietly. I swallowed. And quieter. I didn't know what to say to that. The silence built itself like a second room inside the one we were in, filled with what we weren't saying. I stared at his eyes in the mirror. They didn't blink. He stood by the fireplace but never stepped. Closer. Never even reached for me. Just watched. As if I were an object, something to evaluate. Measure. Control. I finally whispered, "Do you want me to take it off?" My voice cracked on the last word. He didn't answer. Just one long, slow look from head to toe. Not hungry. Not even curious. Analytical. Distant. "No," he said finally. "Not tonight." I turned around then, unsure if I was relieved or insulted. "Why am I here, Mr. Wolfe?" He raised a brow. "You signed the contract. Didn't you read it?" "I read the terms," I said. "I didn't read this." I gestured around the cold, gleaming space, the gaping room with its enormous bed and that goddamn mirror. He took a step forward. Just one. "Then let me clarify." His voice dropped a notch. Not loud, just low enough to feel like a touch I didn't ask for. "I didn't buy your body. I bought your presence, your name, your silence. And what if I don't stay silent? Then I will make you regret not reading the fine print. I should have been scared. Maybe I was, but beneath the fear there was something else, something shameful, a thrill I didn't recognize. "I'm not like her," I blurted. The words came from nowhere. His expression didn't change, but his eyes sharpened. "Like who?" "The woman. In your photos." He said nothing. Not denial, not anger. Just stillness that vibrated with something dark. I was trembling now, but I didn't look away. "You chose me because I look like her, didn't you?" He stepped forward. One pace, then another, until the heat of his body was inches from mine, and we were both staring at our reflection in the mirror, his chest broad behind me, my robe slack at the collarbone. "I chose you," he said slowly, "because I wanted to see if I could control myself." My breath hitched. "Could you?" He leaned down, lips almost brushing my ear. "Tonight?" "Yes." Then he stepped back, left the room, closed the door, and I stood there, heart racing, skin hot, robe damp with nerves, staring into that mirror and realizing he wasn't the only one performing tonight. I was too. I was pretending I didn't want him to touch me. And the worst part was, I wasn't sure I could keep pretending. I didn't sleep. I lay in bed with the silk robe still wrapped around me, staring at the mirror Caleb had left behind, his shadow somehow still clinging to the air like smoke. He hadn't touched me. He hadn't even tried. And I hated how that made me feel. Not safe. Not respected. Just unwanted. The hours passed slowly, the city pulsing beyond the blackout curtains like a world I didn't belong to anymore. Somewhere past 2 a.m., I got up. The sheets were too smooth, too cold, the room too big, too clean. The mirror, though, stayed warm. As if it had memorized how his eyes had traced me through it. I walked toward it barefoot, arms crossed, skin tingling with leftover adrenaline. I stood in front of my reflection, my hair messy, my collarbone sharp against the robe, my mouth slightly parted. I looked like a woman who had been watched, but not touched. Why did that make my skin burn? Why did I want him to? The door clicked. Open. I froze. Caleb stepped in, barefoot, shirtless this time, wearing only dark pants and a look that said nothing and everything all at once. I turned slowly. Couldn't sleep either? He didn't answer. He didn't move. Just stood there with his hands at his sides, gaze dropping, slowly, from my eyes to my throat, then lower. But still, not a single step forward. I should have looked away. I didn't. You're angry, I said, my voice quieter than I intended. Because I mentioned her. Still no reply. He walked toward the window, pulling the curtain back just slightly. City lights spilled in, white and gold and endless. It glinted across his chest, all sharp lines and power under skin. She died 3 years ago, he said finally. The way he said it, like a business report, a statement, not a confession. And I'm not her, I said. No, he said. You're not. Something in the way he said that made the air ripple. You want me to be like her, though, don't you? I asked, voice firmer now. That's why I'm here. He turned. Slowly. Measured. Do you really want to know? My pulse picked up. Yes. He walked toward me. 1 step, 2, until we stood again in front of the mirror, just like last night. Our reflections lined up, me in my silk, him bare-chested, both of us breathing a little too fast. He raised one hand and gently traced a line through the air, not on me, but just above my collarbone. My skin tightened as if he'd touched it. Anyway, I watched you sign that contract without flinching, he said. You didn't ask questions. You didn't try to negotiate. I was desperate. I like desperate, he murmured. I blinked. I didn't choose you because you look like her. That was just a bonus. I swallowed. Then why? He leaned in just enough for his breath to hit the side of my neck. Because I wanted someone who wouldn't fight the rules, he whispered. But now I'm not so sure you won't. His hand dropped. He stepped back. My chest ached from holding my breath. I don't know the rules, I said. He tilted his head. Rule number 1. I don't touch what's not offered. I offered myself last night. You offered confusion. That's not the same. My cheeks flamed. So what do you want me to do? Beg? He studied me, eyes unreadable. Then, yes. I stared at him. You're sick. No, he said calmly. I'm controlled. You confuse control for cruelty. But I've seen what cruelty looks like. I buried it in a silk box 3 years ago. His voice cracked on the word buried, so faint I almost missed it. And just like that, something in me softened. Not entirely, but enough to blur the edges of my anger. Still, I didn't step forward. He walked to the door. Don't worry, Emma, he said over his shoulder. You'll beg, but it won't be for mercy. The door shut behind him like a final note in a song I hadn't realized was playing, and I stood in front of the mirror again. This time not as a girl being watched, but as a woman being dared. He didn't touch me. He just watched. And I hated that I wanted more. The next morning, there was no trace of him. No sound of footsteps, no scent of whiskey or cedar. Just silence, once again, so complete it felt like punishment. I woke alone in the same robe, the same bed, the same glass room. Only now I noticed more. The precision, the control. Even the coffee tray left outside my door had everything symmetrical. One white porcelain cup, one untouched napkin, one small note, dress appropriately, breakfast, 8, main dining room, no signature. I glanced at the clock, 7:42. He didn't leave me time to think, just enough to obey. I found the dining room without help. The house was a maze of stone, glass, and power, every inch sleek and sterile. There were no family photos, no souvenirs, just clean surfaces, cool air, and silence that watched. He was already seated when I arrived. Black suit, white shirt, tie loose at the throat, not casual. Controlled casual, like every choice he made was deliberate, calculated. I stood by the chair across from him, waiting. He didn't look up from his tablet. Sit. I did. Breakfast was plated. Beautiful. Flawless. I couldn't taste it. We ate in silence for 5 minutes before he finally spoke. You went into the library last night. I paused, fork in midair. The door wasn't locked. It didn't need to be. He set the tablet down. His eyes lifted to mine. Until now. I forced a breath. I wasn't snooping. You saw the photo. Not a question. I nodded slowly. She looked like me. She wasn't you. That's comforting. He leaned back, fingers steepled. You're not here to be comforted. I felt the bite in that. Let it settle before responding. Then why am I here, Mr. Wolf? A silence stretched between us, but this one was taut, ready to snap. Then, because the board meets in 30 days. They expect to see a wife. And after that? That depends. On what? Whether you survive the first 30. His voice was quiet, almost bored, but the message beneath it, sharp enough to slice skin. I stood up. If you're trying to intimidate me, I'm not. I'm measuring you. I blinked. Measuring? Your tolerance, your instinct, your capacity. For what? He stood too, taller, broader, closer than he should be, to hold your place in my world without losing your mind. My heart beat louder. You're not the only one in control here. A flicker of something, amusement, crossed his face. No, he said, but I'm the only one who knows the rules. That afternoon, I explored the estate with deliberate rebellion. He wanted silence, stillness, control. I gave him footsteps. Doors opened, lights turned on. And that's when I found the room. Down. A hallway behind the wine cellar, unmarked, slightly ajar. It wasn't the room itself that stopped me. It was what hung on the walls. Photographs. Dozens. Black and white. Some of them torn at the edges. All of the same woman. Over and over. Her hair. Pinned back. Pale lips. Dark eyes. She didn't just look like me. She was me. Or a version of me I hadn't lived. The same tilt of the head. The same hollow in the throat. The same curve of the spine. But not a single photo showed her smiling. I took one off the wall. Hands trembling. On the back, in bold handwriting. Still, even now. Unmoved. My skin prickled. My stomach twisted. This wasn't love. This was obsession. You shouldn't be in here. I spun around. Caleb stood in the doorway, arms crossed. No tie. No expression. You made it easy, I said, voice shaking. You're trespassing. This is your shrine, I snapped. Not your house. He stepped forward, slowly. Careful. Why her? I demanded. Why someone who looks like me? He stopped inches from me. His voice dropped. Because I couldn't bring her back. So I brought the next closest thing. The words hit like a slap. But I'm not her, I whispered. I know. Then, why do you keep staring at me like I'm a ghost? His jaw flexed, his voice low. Because every time I think I've buried her, you open your mouth and it all comes back. That silenced me. His breath was shallow now. His hands clenched at his sides. I didn't bring you here to replace her, he said. I brought you here to forget her. And is it working? He didn't answer. But he stepped forward. Close enough that I felt the heat of his body, the thrum beneath his skin. I thought he would touch me then. He didn't. Just one sharp whisper, against my ear. Rule number 2, Emma. Never assume I won't burn what I can't control. He turned and left. The room felt colder after, but I wasn't scared. Not anymore. I was angry, and beneath that anger was something worse. I wanted him to lose control. He was avoiding me. I knew the signs now, the ghost presence of his footsteps never nearing, the untouched cup of coffee outside my door instead of breakfast together, the steady, sterile hum of a house too quiet to be lived in. But avoidance wasn't silence. Not with Caleb Wolfe. He was watching. I felt it when I walked through the gallery hall, his eyes trailing behind invisible glass. When I moved through the library, no photos now, all taken down overnight. His scent still clung to the books like smoke. He was everywhere and nowhere, and I was done being his shadow, so I found him. At midnight. In the room with the long skylight and the piano he never played, shirtless again, barefoot, leaning against the glass with the skyline behind him. New York stretched like a kingdom beneath our feet, and he ruled over it with a crown of silence. Didn't knock. I'm not her, I said. He didn't flinch. We've been over this. No, I stepped closer. You've said it, but you don't believe it. He turned. Slowly, his jaw tight. "I know exactly who you are, Emma." "Do you?" I challenged. "Because you look at me like you're begging me to come back to life." He said nothing. I walked to him, barefoot on marble, heart a riot in my chest. "You hired someone who looks like your dead wife, moved her into your house, watched her like she's a stranger in your bed, and then pretended it's all about control?" His gaze sharpened. "You're angry." "No." "I'm not angry," I said, stopping inches from him. "I'm insulted." His brow lifted slightly. "Because I won't touch you?" "Because you're too afraid to admit you want to." That broke something. He moved in one breath. One hand slammed against the glass beside my head, the other curling around my waist, dragging me into his heat. His eyes burned, not with grief, but fire, unchecked, unrepentant. Don't mistake restraint for disinterest. His mouth was inches from mine. "I know you want me," I whispered. His breath hitched. "But you won't take me," I said. "Because you're scared that if you do, it won't be her you see anymore. It'll be me." That did it. He kissed me hard, sudden, violent with hunger. My back hit the glass with a soft thud, and his mouth claimed mine like punishment. His hands weren't soft. They gripped, held, owned. My fingers tangled in his hair. He lifted me, legs around his waist, as if nothing about this moment was rehearsed. And then he stopped, just like that, his breath ragged, forehead against mine, hands trembling. "I can't," he said, hoarse. My voice cracked. "Why not?" He gently unwrapped my legs, set me down, stepped back like I'd burned him. "Because you're not a ghost," he said. "You're real, and if I keep going, I won't stop. So don't." He looked at me, really looked at me, and then, "I buried her. But she's not the one haunting me anymore." He walked away, leaving the room like it had caught fire. I stood there, lips swollen, breath uneven, every part of me humming with want and confusion. Because that kiss, whatever it was, wasn't for her. And for the first time, I realized something terrifying. He wasn't the only one losing control. The next morning, the mirror was gone from my bedroom. In its place, a framed window with no reflection. Just light. I didn't knock. I opened the door to his bedroom without asking, without pausing, without air in my lungs. He was there, sitting in the leather chair by the window, shirt unbuttoned, sleeves rolled, tie discarded on the floor like restraint had been tried and failed. The city lit the lines of his chest in flickers of gold and blue. He didn't move. He didn't speak. But his eyes, God, those eyes, locked on me the second I stepped inside. I let the robe fall. It slid down my shoulders, past my hips, pooling, at my feet. No lingerie, no barrier, just skin and pulse and decision. His jaw clenched. Still, he didn't touch me. I stepped closer, slowly, carefully, letting him see everything. "I'm not here for pretending," I said. "Not for contracts. Not for ghosts." He still didn't move. "I want you," I said, lower now. "Do you hear me, Caleb?" A flicker in his eyes. Barely, like something caged testing the lock. "I hear you," he said, voice hoarse. "Then what are you waiting for? You haven't said it." "I just did." "Not like you mean it." I felt the heat rise in me. Anger, humiliation, want. All of it sharpened into a single truth. I wanted him to break, and I wanted to be the one who did it. I walked until my knees touched his, took his hand, pressed it to the inside of my thigh. "I'm begging you." I whispered. And he shattered. In one brutal, hungry movement, he stood, gripped the back of my neck, and crushed his mouth to mine. No hesitation. No mercy! I gasped into him, hands fisting in his open shirt as he walked me backward, body against body, heat on heat, until my back hit the bedpost and he lifted me without breaking the kiss. My legs wrapped around him as his mouth moved down, my neck, rough, biting, worshipping. Fingers tangled in my hair, holding me in place as if afraid I'd vanish. He laid me back on the bed like he owned it, like he owned me. And then he paused, just for a second, our eyes locked. "You begged," he said, voice dark, breath unsteady. "You don't get to take it back now." "I won't," I whispered. He bent and kissed the space between my ribs, then lower, his hands on my thighs, spreading me, holding me. I arched into him, the air leaving my lungs in ragged, broken gasps. There was no slow. There was no patience, only fire and friction and the sound of control tearing in two. He took me like he'd been waiting forever. Like it hurt not to. Like every second he'd held back had to be paid forward now in full. His mouth was everywhere, neck, chest, hips. His hands never stopped moving, holding, guiding, gripping. I met every thrust, every demand with my own, no longer shy, no longer unsure. I wasn't a ghost anymore. I was alive, burning. And when I cried out his name, it wasn't polite. It wasn't careful. It was raw. He stilled above me, eyes locked, sweat at his temple, chest heaving. And then, slower, gentler, he leaned down and pressed his forehead to mine. "You're not her," he said. I nodded, breathless. "And I don't want her anymore." I wrapped my arms around his shoulders, pulled him closer. "Good," I whispered, "because I'm not done with you." We didn't sleep. Not really. There were hours, maybe whole pieces of the night. But every time I closed my eyes, he was there again. Hands, mouth, voice, low and desperate. By morning, I wasn't the same girl who walked in with a robe. I was marked, claimed, and I liked it. He didn't say anything when I finally pulled the sheets over us, both of us soaked in heat and breath and ache. He just stared at me, but not like before, not as a ghost, not as a performance, just me. And I realized he hadn't been waiting for me to beg. He'd been waiting to let go, and I was the only one he trusted to catch him. By morning, everything had changed. He didn't say it. I didn't either. But something about the way he pulled the sheets over me, how his fingers brushed my shoulder like he didn't want to stop touching. It was different. No longer a contract, no longer a performance, or so I thought. It started with a door, the wrong one, left ajar. I wasn't looking for anything. I just wandered. But I found a file room, locked from the inside, probably forgotten in routine. Inside, contracts, folders, stacked reports on Wolf Financial, and me, a photo, stapled to the front of a file. Match profile, Emma Quinn. Appearance, 92%, behavioral. Risk, low. Emotional compliance, high. My stomach dropped. There were 3 other profiles below mine, women who looked vaguely similar, all rejected. I felt cold. I flipped the page. Another document. Approved. For strategic use in estate management, public relations, and shareholder perception management. My breath stopped. I wasn't chosen. I was filtered. A data point. A profile. A match. Everything last night, my body, my mouth, my heart, it had all opened for someone who had hired me the same way he might hire a PR team. I slammed the door behind me and marched through the house. Each step harder, sharper, until I found him exactly where he always was when I didn't want to see him, by the window, watching. You recruited me. His head turned slowly. What are you talking about? I threw the folder at his feet. He looked down, didn't deny it. I wasn't a person to you. I was a goddamn checklist. His jaw flexed. It wasn't like that. Then what was it, Caleb? Because from where I'm standing, I was a convenient replica, a replaceable body, to serve a function. He stepped forward. You don't understand. No, you don't understand, I snapped. I thought last night meant something. It did. Not to me, I whispered. Not anymore. He stopped. Cold. I see, he said, voice flat. I turned to leave. But then, she's dead. You make me feel alive. I froze. My heart lurched. I turned slowly, tears biting at my eyes. What did you just say? His mouth was tight, as if the words had betrayed him. His hands were shaking. I didn't want to feel anything. Not again. And then you walked in with her face and your voice, and I thought, God, I thought I could control it. His voice cracked. I was wrong. The silence between us fractured. You used me, I said. And now you want to reframe it as some tragic mistake? No. He stepped forward. I want you to know that I see you now. Not her. Not a replacement. You. And it terrifies me. I backed away. Too late. Emma, no, I said, voice hardening. You don't get to be scared. You don't get to tell me I woke you up when you were the one who put me to sleep. I didn't cry. Not until I reached my room and slammed the door. I left that night. No note. No goodbye. Just the sound of the elevator humming down 60 floors and the breath I didn't realize I'd been holding for weeks. Back at my father's empty storefront, the dust hadn't been cleaned in months. A for-lease sign still hung, sideways in the window. I curled up in the back room on a cot that used to belong to the tailor. No pillow, no wolf linens. Just silence. But it wasn't cruel this time. It was mine. The first day, he didn't come. The second either. But on the third, I opened the door to find him standing outside the glass. Rain streaking down his suit, hands clenched, soaked like he hadn't moved all night. I opened the door, and he stepped inside without asking. I didn't come to convince you, he said. I folded my arms. Good, because I'm not coming back. I know. Pause. I just needed you to know. The folder wasn't the plan. It was the excuse. What's the difference? He looked straight into me. The plan was to use you. The excuse was that it didn't matter who you were. And now? He swallowed. Now, it's only you. Even if you never come back. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because some part of me still ached when I looked at him. But another part, stronger now, ached more when I looked away. He broke me with silence. And then, with the truth, he shattered himself. He didn't look like Caleb Wolfe when he stepped into the store. He looked smaller. Not physically. He was still tall, sculpted, impossible to ignore. But something about the way his shoulders slouched, the way his hands fidgeted with nothing to hold, stripped him of the armor he wore like skin. He looked like a man who'd finally stopped pretending he couldn't bleed. The bell above the door rang, the same way it had for years when this place used to sell hope in the form of fabric and lace. Now, it just echoed. I thought you might come back, I said, voice quiet. I didn't, he replied. His eyes scanned the room, dusty bolts of cloth, abandoned mannequins, my coat hanging on the rack behind the counter. No glass, no mirrors, just raw space. You grew up here, he said. I nodded. Everything I know about how to survive started in this room. He met my eyes, and I tried to replace it with a prison made of windows. You tried to replace me with a ghost." He flinched. Slight, but real. "I did," he said. "And I regret it more than I know how to say." I didn't answer, because this time, he wasn't here to provoke. He was here to lay something down. He stepped forward. No suit jacket, no watch, just him. I told myself I needed someone who wouldn't make noise, someone who'd stay where I put her, someone I could manage. And I wasn't manageable. He shook his head. "No, you weren't. You were wild and soft and real. You said things that didn't come from strategy. You looked at me like I wasn't a project, like I was a person." Silence bloomed between us. Not cold this time. Not empty. Just honest. "You're not used to being seen, are you?" I said. His voice dropped. "Not without conditions. And what do you see when you look at me now?" He looked at me. Really looked. Not her. Not the file. Not the contract. Just, "Emma." I bit my lip, the knot in my chest twisting. "And what do you want from her?" I asked. He didn't move. Nothing. That one word landed like thunder. "Nothing?" I echoed. "No obedience. No performance. I just want to be near her, even if she never lets me touch her again." I exhaled, eyes burning. "And if I never do?" "I'll still stay." Silence again. And then, "I love you." My head jerked up. He was pale, but steady. "You don't have to say it back," he added quickly. I needed you to hear it without leverage, without control. Just truth." A long, still moment passed. He didn't move, didn't reach for me, didn't beg. And somehow, that was what undid me. Because for the first time, he wasn't performing. He wasn't demanding. He was letting me choose. I stepped around the counter. Slowly, one step. Then another, until I was in front of him. I reached up, touched his chest, right where his heart beat fast and wild. "I hated you," I whispered. "I know. I hated how you looked at me like I was a problem you needed to solve. I looked at everyone that way. But I wasn't everyone." "No," he said. "You were the first unsolvable thing I couldn't walk away from." I closed my eyes, pain and love and clarity twisting like threads in a spool. When I looked up, he was still watching me. Open, waiting. "You said once that I confused control for cruelty," I said. "But what if I confused fear for power?" "What do you mean?" I took a breath. "Maybe I wasn't afraid of you. Maybe I was afraid of what would happen if I gave you power over me." He nodded. "You should be. And maybe I'm not anymore." I stepped closer. Close enough that his breath caught. "Do you want me to stay?" I asked. His answer was immediate. "Yes. But not because of the contract. No. Not because of her. No." "Then why?" He reached out, hand barely grazing mine. "Because when I'm near you, I don't feel dead anymore." I tilted my chin. "Then stay." He froze. "What?" "I'm not asking you to leave," I said. "I'm asking you to come home." His jaw tightened. His eyes, always cold, always guarded, shone with something unfiltered. "Emma." I put my hand on his cheek. "I'm not her," I whispered. "I know. I'm not the file. I burned it, and I'm not here to complete your life." He nodded slowly. "Then what are you here for?" I smiled. "To make one with you." We didn't kiss right away. We just stood there, holding each other's gaze, like two people who had finally dropped every mask. And when his arms finally wrapped around me, I didn't flinch. Because this time, it wasn't about taking. It was about choosing. He didn't take me back to the penthouse. He asked me where I wanted to go. And for the first time, I didn't answer with a place. I answered with a need. Somewhere with no mirrors. So we drove, past midnight, past state lines, until the skyline disappeared behind us and the city became a memory. We stopped at a coastal inn, small and quiet, the kind of place that didn't ask questions. No suite, no glass, just wood beams, warm light, and a single bed with a cotton quilt that smelled like rain. He didn't undress me like he was owed. He did it like he'd never get another chance. Slow, careful, reverent. I watched him as he traced every part of me with his eyes before his hands. As if this time, he didn't need to prove anything. As if the wanting itself was enough. "You're quiet," I whispered, breath catching when his fingers brushed the back of my neck. "I'm trying to remember how this feels," he murmured. "This? Not being afraid to lose something." My throat tightened. He looked up, gaze bare. "You terrify me, Emma." "Why?" "Because I didn't think I could want anything again. Then you showed up. And now, I'd burn everything to keep you." I leaned forward and kissed him. Not because he asked, because I needed to. This kiss wasn't frantic like the first, or wild like the night I begged. It was deep, sure, anchored in everything we hadn't said when we were too busy watching each other through walls we thought kept us safe. We undressed each other slowly, silently, with reverence. Every button undone like a truth laid bare. Every inch of skin revealed like a secret finally spoken aloud. No reflection. But I didn't need one to know what I looked like in his arms. He laid me down gently, his body pressing into mine with the weight of months. Months of restraint, regret, rediscovery. His hands held my face like he was afraid it might disappear. "I see you," he whispered. And he did. Every breath, every gasp, every quiet yes falling from my lips. We moved like we'd done this before, but never like this. Never with nothing to prove, nothing to take back. Every motion was a question, and every answer was yes. Yes, yes. He was slow, then deeper, then still. And when I wrapped my arms around his shoulders, pulling him as close as he'd let me, I felt something I hadn't felt since the day I signed the contract. I belonged, not to a man, not to a house, to this, to us. After we lay tangled in sheets too soft for strangers and too intimate for anything less than forever. My head rested on his chest, and I listened to his heartbeat like a lullaby I never knew I needed. "I should have given you more," he said. "You gave me everything." He turned to face me, brushing hair from my cheek. "I gave you walls, contracts, rules." I smiled faintly. "And you tore them down. That's enough." He hesitated. "I didn't know if you'd ever forgive me." "I didn't forgive you," I said gently. "I chose you." There was a difference. He understood. In the morning, he brought me coffee in a chipped white mug, his shirt unbuttoned, his eyes sleepy but soft. "No boardroom meetings today?" I teased. "Resigned last night," he said. I blinked. "You, what?" "Sent the notice while you slept." My jaw dropped. "Caleb, your empire—" "I don't want to build empires anymore," he said, placing the mug in my hands. "I want to build mornings like this." I stared at him. He meant it. He wasn't wearing wolf anymore. He was just Caleb. Mine. We got married again. No lawyers, no contracts. Just us, on a beach where the wind tangled my hair and his thumb brushed tears from my cheek. "I do," I whispered. He didn't say anything for a moment. He just looked at me like I was the sunrise. Then, mine. Forever. Later that night, in a cottage overlooking the sea, we lay in bed, tangled in sheets, breath steady and full. "You know," I said, tracing his chest with my fingers, "we started with watching." He smiled. "I remember. You didn't touch me. You begged. And now?" He turned, rolling me gently beneath him, his weight a welcome gravity. "Now," he said, brushing his mouth against mine, "I'll never stop. The mirror is gone. The act is over. And what's left is real." If this story moved you, even just a little, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. Every click helps keep these moments alive, and I'd love to bring you into the next one.